As human beings, we've invented a lot. We've learned to harness and channel energy through the modality of electricity. And because of electricity, our whole world has changed. You know, we have 24/7 existence. You know, before there was electricity, they used to have to play sports during the day because they didn't have stadium lighting. But just think about it, all the things that we take for granted, hospitals and all of the technology and all of the machinery that operates is all based upon electricity. Businesses, restaurants, everything that you can imagine functions through that. So what happens when that supply gets cut off or a storm comes? Well, if those places are prepared or if they're large enough, they have what's called generators. And when that supply is cut off, those generators kick on, and it's as if nothing has been interrupted. Not so much individually. I remember the last time, well, about a year before my mother passed away, there was yet one more hurricane that went through Beaumont, Texas, and pretty much shut down the town. And she had to be moved to my sister's in Dallas at the time. And, you know, the refrigerator then wasn't working. And then you come back, and after about 3 weeks, because the whole town had been shut down for 3 weeks, you basically have to throw the refrigerator away. I mean, the smell and the spoil and all of that. And but there's this thing called generators that kick on. And I think about power. I think about what power represents. And I think about power in terms of our spirituality, and how we actually don't need a generator for spiritual power because it's always there. There's been a misconception in teaching, and we use this analogy, and I don't think it's accurate anymore. And we say that it's like electricity. What we can do is we can plug ourselves into that spiritual power. Well, actually, we don't plug ourselves into spiritual power because we've never been unplugged. What we do is we, through recognition, through consciousness, through self-awareness, through growing and expansion, understand that there is an internal switch, and that when we give ourselves the opportunity to be in alignment with that power, it's as if we're saying yes to that source, and we flip the switch on. And if we're unconscious to that, or we're resistant to that, or we think we're unworthy, or that just sounds like a bunch of hogwash, then we've turned the switch off to that power. But it doesn't mean that the power isn't existent within us. And that's really the most incredible thing to remember, particularly philosophically in the way that we look at our lives in terms of spirituality, that it's all about recognition. And then once you recognize it, once you get past the intellectual part of it, it's what are you going to do with that? Where's the action going to take place? Today's talk is called Spiritual Strategy, and I can guarantee you, if I said there were 101 steps that you needed to do in order to be in alignment with spiritual strategy, you would go, oh, okay, let's buckle down because I don't want to miss any. And because it's a little bit hard, you would find great value in that. And today there's only 2 steps. And you're going to go, what? That's so easy. But yet it's easy intellectually. It's the application part that really messes with so many of us. But spiritual power, we actually don't plug into it. We are it. We are it. And we think more in terms of switching it on through recognition and allowance, and switching it off through resistance. And as we look at this season, and we talk so much about light and the winter solstice coming up and illumination and the birth of the Christ child and all of the metaphor and the mysticism and the allegory around that, it is a reminder for us that even in the apparent absence of something such as light, that light fully is in existence. It doesn't go away. We don't plug into light. We just say, welcome, in terms of its presence and its applicability through us. And so the same is with power. It's not that the genius that is a part of that which is the all has ever been absent or void from you and I. It's that we simply haven't turned the switch in order to allow it to fully access within us. And so healing, then, is where the sickness is, awaiting recognition. Peace is where the turmoil is, awaiting recognition. Abundance is where the lack is, awaiting recognition. Solution is actually where the problem, the perceived problem is, awaiting recognition. And love is always, always where the fear is, awaiting recognition. None of those things are absent. None of those things are absent inside you and I. They're just awaiting recognition. And so to strategize or align ourselves spiritually is first to be able to see it, to own it, to speak it, to name it, to claim it, and in our ability to claim it, then determine to what degree are we actually going to do something about it. If you really want to be a light worker in this world, then you understand that you are already light, but now you're going to work that light by the way in which you think, by the way in which you speak, by the way in which you integrate into society. If you and I are going to be evolutionary beings, then we have to think evolutionary. We have to own the fact that that evolvement is already a part of who we are because we're expanded beings, constantly, eternally changing and growing. But it's what are you going to do about that? And it's the applicability. It's really getting down to the tangibles, the spiritual tangibles within the human experience that changes the landscape of everything. So I want you to listen to this phrase. What I want, I already have. Now I want you to close your eyes for a moment and breathe, and I want you to say it and repeat it after me. And then once you say it, I want you to pause for a moment, and I want you to check in and see what that feels like. What I want, I already have. What I want, I already have. So breathe. What does that do inside of you in your mental processing? What kind of reset occurs, or what kind of resistance comes up? What kind of verbiage floats through your mind of, yeah, right, or yay, or of course? And you start to measure your recognition and your application of that. Say it again. What I want, I already have. What I want, I already have. And repeat this line. What I long to be, I already am. And again, feel that. What you're notating, or what you're giving voice to, is the fact that the power that we're talking about isn't outside of you, never has been. It's just awaiting recognition. So take a deep breath and bring your awareness back to the room. Healing is where the sickness is, awaiting recognition. So when we're sick, we have some options. The option is not to deny the sickness in human form, because that's a part of our reality, but as the sickness is occurring, to do what? To acknowledge the presence of wholeness. There is the paradox then, right, between balancing the world of spirituality and humanity. How in the world, when I'm feeling so awful, do I acknowledge wholeness? Well, you got to try. It's no different than looking at all of the warring and all of the conflict in our world, whether it be through media or the computer or the printed word, to look at those things and to also understand that there is peace exactly at the same time. So as I look at that, I get to declare and practice and affirm that there is something beyond the surface. So even in my illness, there is still a level of wholeness beyond the surface of what I'm experiencing. And what we begin to understand by law is that wherever the majority of my devotion goes to is what I experience in that same majority or by degree. So if I'm all about ain't it awful, if I'm all about what I don't have, if my language, if my friendships, if my business, if my family, if everything about me is ain't it awful, then in spite of the fact that there is so much working in the world, I am not going to be able to recognize it, nor will I be able to see it or experience it. And it's not because it isn't there, it's because I'm not strategizing, I'm not working, I'm not in alignment with it spiritually. Sounds so simple, right? But it's the biggest part of the human experience as a spiritual being. And so once again, we have to look at, and when I'm experiencing what I perceive to be a problem, I have to stop and I have to pause and I go, solution is where the problem is, awaiting recognition. What does that tell me? That says if I'm willing to get still enough, if I'm willing to stop talking about the problem and gathering evidence about the problem, but to be in the stillness and invite, participate with whatever that solution is yet to be, then that solution will be made known to me because I have created the space for it. And that's how that works. And there is no other bypass. There's no spiritual bypass to that. No one else can do it for us. It becomes the opportunity where we recognize that I've never been cut off from the power of life itself, so I might as well stop resisting my ownership of that. I might as well give up the weary, heavy, laden story about not doing it right, not being enough. I might as well get over that and get about the business of being in tune and acceptance of the power that is already within me. I don't have to go get it. I get to let it. I get to let it through its recognition. So there was a story once about Buddha who was threatened with death by a bandit. Then please, before you kill me, fulfill my dying wish, said Buddha. Cut off the branch of that tree. And with one slash of the sword, it was done. What now? Asked the bandit. Put it back again, said Buddha. And the bandit laughed. You must be crazy to think that anyone can do that. On the contrary, said Buddha, it is you who are crazy, to think that you are mighty because you can wound and destroy. That is the task of children. The mighty know how to create and heal. So the mighty know how to recognize and apply. You see, when we think about which side of the operation of consciousness we're on, too often we're on the side of the bandit. We're wounding or we're cutting ourselves off from a power that can't be actually cut off. We're saying we're not a part of something that we automatically are a part of. So what we really do is when we recognize, it's as if we put the severed nature of our wounding back into alignment with that which is universal. It's doing exactly what Buddha instructed us to do. We are the ones that have cut ourselves off from the power, but by ownership, we put ourselves back and we move away from being childish and immature and unconscious to being something that is a light bearer that understands and begins to claim exactly what is ours. Think about the word claiming. You ever gone to a restaurant or a theater or something and you turned your coat in and they give you a claim check, right? Imagine if after you have dined or after you've watched the show, you don't go back to the booth, you just hang on to the ticket, and then you go outside and then you get angry because you're cold. And then you want to be mad at the world and be mad at Mother Nature and be mad at the people that you're with because they won't give you their coat when all the time you're holding your own claim ticket. And all you have to do is go up and show that and take it. So to claim something simply means that we have to take ownership and go up and take what is ours. And by taking, I'm talking about recognizing it. Because it's never been a part of us. It's always there. Our founder, Ernest Holmes, said one of the great difficulties in this new order of thought is that we are likely to indulge in too much theory and too little practice. And as a matter of fact, we only know as much as we can prove by actual demonstration. I actually like that second part. I'm only going to know the power through the degree of my demonstration of the power. Otherwise, it's still going to be intellectual, right? It's just going to be a theory. I'm not going to really know what that power is until I take it upon myself through its recognition to now go and apply it. Which means that through the illness, through the turmoil, through the lack, through the problem, through the fear, if I don't claim that those polarities exist and that the spiritual principle behind those polarities are there, then I will always be at the effect of what the world is delivering to me. And nothing will change. Nothing will change. He said what the world needs is spiritual conviction followed by spiritual experience. I would rather see a student of this science prove its principle than to have him repeat all of the words of wisdom that have ever been uttered. It is far easier to teach the truth than it is to practice it. So you're all getting a grade at the end of service today based upon your practice of it. But you understand this, right? I'm really never going to fully know how much power is actually inside of me unless I begin to walk into the mystery of what I haven't explored before. To let that power that is already inside of me to be uncovered, to be tasted and tested and tried. And that becomes my mission. That becomes the thing that calls me. And so it's interesting. A lot of turmoil going on. Lots of people in their stuff, right? And I don't know if it's seasonal. I don't know if there's something about when this hemisphere goes into the dark and we're having all of the resurgence and the winter and the dying off and preparing for the birth of something new, that maybe physiologically it does something to us. Maybe as we enter into the commercialism of the season, maybe as we enter into the cycles of the winter solstice, it begins to do something to our nervous system. I don't know, but lots of people are in turmoil. Lots of wonderful meltdowns. And some of the things, the common themes that I'm hearing center around this thing of work. So here's what we do if we don't recognize and apply or spiritually strategize. We go and we default to the same old way that we've done it before. So when lack is there, remember I said that prosperity is where the lack is, awaiting recognition. So let's say that lack comes and visits at our doorstep. What we might have a tendency to do is to default to the old way that we've had a relationship with lack. It's like, come on in. So lack comes in, and then we go, okay, I've been told that I have a really strong work ethic, and that having a really strong work ethic is a noble thing. So the way in which I'm going to do this dance with lack is I'm going to take 3 extra jobs, and I'm just going to work myself ragged. But I will have a strong work ethic. And I will be noble. Which then ultimately doesn't change anything, because as I show up with my strong work ethic, how many of you were taught that a strong work ethic is everything, right? All right. So what we do is we show up in these circumstances, in these back-to-back stacked unilateral jobs, working ourselves to death. But we still think the same thing about the way in which the world works. We still think the same thing about the fact that plenitude or power is outside of us. And we might get a little extra windfall, and we might pacify that particular turmoil. But then when the next cycle comes around, what do we end up doing? The work ethic kicks in. And off we go again, practicing the same thing. Cyclically, when we're supposed to be spiraling up, we're just stuck in the groove. And that work ethic then becomes the way in which we do life. But I was wondering this week, what if instead of priding ourselves in a work ethic, we prided ourselves in a thought ethic? It doesn't mean that I don't work, but it means before I show up, before I succumb to whatever it is that I'm feeling that I need to do in order to take care of my responsibilities, that I go about taking inventory and pride and time and reverence with my thoughts, so that people could go, wow, what a great thought ethic that person has. Because you see, when I take care of the thought ethic, when I do the work and I understand that healing is where the sickness is, that abundance and prosperity is where the seeming lack is, what I'm doing is I'm overriding the illusion. What I'm doing is I'm flipping the switch back on inside of me to this power that I thought that I was absent from, and I'm just saying, hey, I'm willing to collaborate with you. And then by universal spiritual law, what we understand happens is that all of the resistance moves away, and those circumstances, seen, unseen, expected, unexpected, can begin to come and work with us, so that the thought then becomes the primary thing, not the work itself. If I don't change my thought around that, I will end up having so many jobs in my lifetime, but I will never have really gotten anywhere, because I will have been a slave to the menial labor of what the world teaches me I must do, rather than what is available to me through the expansion of spirit. And so we get to change that. We get to understand the difference of that. Some of the phrases that we use in teaching are the terms absolute and relative. Absolute, obviously, is synonymous with God, with the universe, with the pantheistic ideology that talks about the fact that this creative universal force is the substance behind all things. It's absolute, right? You, as a human being, we're relative. We have skin and dimension and form and limitation to us, but what we also possess within this human part is the unlimited boundlessness of thought. So here's the way it works. In my relative nature, I get to expose and invite everything within the realm of the absolute to come and collaborate with me. So even though I will never, ever be the complete and totality of wholeness, everything that is whole is already inside of me. Even though I will never have every single coin of human riches in my possession, I will be able to be a part of that universal wealth to the degree that I acknowledge and I accept it. Even though I will never have the full extent of every single individual person on the planet revering and honoring my creativity, I will expand that experience to the degree that I allow the absolutism of respect for my creativity to come into me. So you see, it's a to the degree thing, right? To the degree that I expand the absolutism in this relative form is the degree in which the world will match that back. It will never be any other way. For me to expect the world to give something to me that I'm not willing to give myself is the definition of insanity. Oh, God, I want them to love me so much. Oh, look at that. Good God. Doesn't happen that way. The strategy that is invited to us to participate in is one of memory, remembering, remember. If you look at that, the prefix re and the word member, We are a member of the absolute. And we are called to remember that. And to the degree that we remember ourselves to the absolute is the degree in which the absolute will show up and will collaborate with us, will open doors that we didn't even know existed. I often say this because this thought, I like to sit with thoughts. I like to sometimes sit with the word infinite and just sit with the word to try to figure out what that might mean for me. I like to sit in the silence and hear music playing. But I like this thought. I love this one. Entertain the idea that some of the most pivotal people that are going to be a part of your life you haven't even met yet. Just entertain that idea for a second. So to the degree that I get busy, hallelujah, because he's looking around going, you ain't going to do it. Yeah. I had enough of you. But to the degree, think of this, to the degree that I know that magnificence and divine order, and think of this, perfect creative self-expression is awaiting my recognition. The moment that I recognize it, and then I go about the business of allowing it, circle of influence changes. Suddenly I'm running into people. People are calling me. There are things that begin to shift because I have shifted, you see. And so if there's any gift that is representational of this Christic birth, that this season of light, this illumination, that this power keeps beckoning us to remember, is that the Christ child birth story is not reserved for that alone. It is your story. It's always been your story. It's always been your story. That means that as you are there birthed in pure form, there is a North Star that is leading these archetypes to come to you to support you. We call them the three wise men in the story, but it's wise principles, it's wise energy that's migrating and coming towards you and I, because we are birthed into that pure form of power. And so everything that supports the power is coming our way. It's coming our way. Now imagine if Mary and Joseph said, God, we don't want any visitors, and they just shut the door. I look a mess. If they didn't bring sandwiches, don't let them in. Everything is just if you think of the story, how far a distance did those people come? The three wise men, shepherds, far distances. And they didn't even know what they were marching towards. They were just compelled to march. Think about the energies out in the world that are going to march towards you and I, not even realizing why, but just compelled to. Because we have owned our power. We've owned our Christic nature. That is the story. That's what the birth represents, and that's what you and I are here to be. And so again, what I want, I already have. Breathe. Just think about it. And what I long to be, I already am. What I long to be, I already am. And may we no longer wait for recognition, but may recognition be the automatic switch that we turn on and leave on for the remainder of our days. And so it is. Hi, I'm David Ault, and I simply want to say thanks. Thanks for taking the time to watch our broadcast here at Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta. We have a vision, and that vision is to reawaken all to their spiritual magnificence. And one of the ways that we are able to do that is through this very medium of broadcasting. So if you got anything out of this, if you felt in any way inspired, or if something spoke to you directly, then I extend an invitation to you to become a part of our family by donating. And there are many ways in order for you to be able to do that. One is to simply go to our website at slca.com, and there you will find all different kinds of prompts that will help you support what it is that we are doing here in Atlanta. One way is to become a pledger. That means that you decide on a monthly basis that you are going to help us with this vision. Another way is to donate through our management system called Fellowship One, another through PayPal, and another even easier way is on your cell phone. You can do what's called text to tithe, and that number is 404-796-7030. Again, thank you so much for your support, and I invite you to come back weekly to see what it is that we're up to. Blessings.